Everything that matters is simply a means to one end. That end is happiness. Happiness is achieved through the rational pursuit of pleasure and avoidance of pain. Emphasis on the word rational. Truth, knowledge, information, morality. All of these things are only a means to the end of happiness, and only matter insofar as they serve that end. They all only exist insofar as they serve the ultimate and inescapable goal of happiness. They are all tools that exist simply to serve happiness. They have no inherent value, and are to be judged solely on their capacity to maximize happiness, as the desire for happiness is the most fundamental and important part of human sentience, and the only thing that truly matters. This makes me something of a utilitarian, although I am also something of an ethical egoist, and in the realm of epistemology, an instrumentalist. The idea that happiness is the ultimate and most important end is fundamentally a very utilitarian idea. It is also a very defensible idea. The desire for happiness, the desire to pursue pleasure and avoid pain, is fundamental to sentient existence. It is inescapable. The desire for happiness is at the core of every mind. It is not a mere opinion, it is an unshakable reality. It is innate to existence itself. As the utilitarian philosopher Jeremy Bentham said, quote, "Nature has placed mankind under the governance of two sovereign masters, pain and pleasure. It is for them alone to point out what we ought to do, as well as to determine what we shall do." End quote. Pain and pleasure matter as they relate to happiness. Pleasure is happiness, and pain is undesirable as it gets in the way of happiness. Happiness is the one and only great good. Happiness is so truly and purely good and desirable, it is almost completely beyond explanation. It does not need its own foundation, it is the ultimate foundation, and every person knows this. It is fundamentally good and desirable in a way nothing else is. It is the most foundational component of human existence, and the existence of a great many sentient creatures. Everything we fear, hate, and dislike, we fear, hate, and dislike because we associate it with unhappiness. Everything we love, desire, and value, we love, desire, and value because we associate it with happiness. This is fundamental and it is definitional. These things are the foundation of our existence and the things that matter the most. We can be misled into choosing the wrong path, but we will always desire happiness. You can debate if freedom matters. You can debate if equality matters. You can debate if just about anything matters. But you cannot debate if happiness matters, because it is by definition desirable. It is by definition a good thing, the best of things. All else that is desirable is only so insofar as it relates to happiness. Arguments on the desirability of other things, on the desirability of freedom and equality, will always come back to happiness looking for a justification. This is the only way we can found any of our points in rationality, because the core of self-interest is the pursuit of happiness. Happiness is the best thing. It is by definition good. It is the thing from which the very idea of good arose, and defines how we view everything else. Everything that matters only as a means to the end of happiness. I invite you to try to argue that something matters, that we should value something, without invoking happiness in some way. Good luck. Everyone will invoke happiness because this is the thing which matters the most, and everyone knows it. Happiness is the basis of everything else we view as important. The importance of happiness is hardly worth arguing because everyone already knows how important it is. Some people are irrational, but all people try to pursue happiness in some way or another. It is the foundation of existence as we know it as sentient creatures. It is the pursuit of happiness that underlines the complex and nuanced idea of self-interest, and it is self-interest, real or perceived, that drives actions and behavior. The pursuit of happiness is in simple terms the very basis of existence as we know it. It is the thing that is good by definition, the one thing that is inarguably good, the one thing that is good for everyone. It is the one thing people do not need to be convinced of the goodness of. It is the greatest and most important thing, the only thing that we need not argue about, but instead appeal to, because we understand full well that it is of great importance to everyone. We must understand this and base our moral and political views around this fundamental and inescapable inherent basis of human nature and sentient life. Happiness is all that matters, meaning our ideas must acknowledge it and be tied to it. It is the ultimate end. It is the only end that matters. Everything else is simply a means to it. We must justify our views according to the pursuit of happiness, the ultimate goal of human life and the thing that underlies rational self-interest. This is the only way to find a rational grounding for our views, because it relates directly to self-interest, which is the thing that matters the most and the driving force of human existence and sentience. Anything that cannot tie itself to self-interest, the pursuit of happiness, is meaningless and baseless preferences. These things do not deserve respect, there is no reason they should be respected. They do not serve a utility, and if they don't serve a utility, there is no reason to follow them. Happiness and its relating ideas, among them pleasure, well-being, and satisfaction, are all that matters. They are all that is inherently and by definition good, making them all that is truly desirable and the foundation of everything else. They are the only things the desirability of which is not debatable but inherent and inescapable. Humanity should only be expected to embrace and take seriously ideas which serve it. An idea which does not base itself in the rational interest of humanity does not serve humanity. The desirability or undesirability of actions must be judged by the consequence of those things on happiness, be that the happiness of an individual or the total happiness of society. Morality exists as a set of rules which exist to serve the ultimate end, some form of happiness, real or perceived. Further rational inquiry is necessary to evaluate exactly what that looks like. Obviously, when we pursue happiness, we must do so in rational ways. This is very important. Any respectable moral system will be grounded in rational interest. Otherwise, there is no reason whatsoever why people should respect it. In fact, if the moral system is contrary to happiness, people should be expected to turn away from it. If moral systems which serve the rational goal of happiness better are available, rational actors should be expected to turn to them instead. Respectable moral systems must in some way be connected to the one and only ultimate self-interest of rationally pursuing happiness. As I say, massive emphasis on the word rational. From there we can consider which ones fulfill that function the best. We can look at whether we want a moral system which serves individuals or groups of people, the individual or the society. Acknowledging this fact, however, is the first crucial step to creating moral systems which serve the rational end of happiness, as all moral systems should. Moral systems that do not are irrational and do not deserve respect. Their ability to serve this fundamental requirement of maximizing happiness makes and breaks moral systems. It divides them into inferior and superior categories. It justifies their embrace or condemnation and destruction. Maximizing happiness is all that matters. Some moral systems are better than others because they serve happiness more or less adequately. Moral systems which do not take into account rational self-interest are an irrational joke and deserve little respect. All respectable moral systems will take into account the rational self-interest of either everyone or the majority. Taking into account self-interest is crucial because it is what determines the worth and desirability of a system. Without such things, a system cannot justify itself and is irrational, simply a baseless preference which will never deserve respect until it can align itself better with self-interest through the use of social or political authoritarianism, that is, social pressure or law. Good moral systems should rely first and foremost on rationality, not control. Any moral system, no matter how bad, can seize control, but not any moral system can align with rational interest. The most desirable moral systems are those which align with rational interest. the moral system which does the latter will always be superior to that which does the former, as it aligns with inherent interests and is therefore rational and desirable. Do not run away from this reality. With the necessary nuance and rationality, you will find a great many left-wing and progressive ideas are easily compatible with a rational basis, and are on these grounds superior and more desirable than many of their competitors. Do note that this is not an immediate and total justification of utilitarianism. Utilitarianism tends to make the assumption that the happiness of another is equally desirable as the happiness of oneself. To establish utilitarianism even following this fact of happiness requires greater reasoning than has been offered here. We must, for example, introduce reciprocity. We could, for example, state that it is in your interest for everyone else to be a utilitarian, so therefore you should act as a utilitarian. This would be a rational argument for utilitarianism from reciprocity. It actually puts some reason behind the idea that everyone's suffering is equal, because you have a rational interest in other people viewing your suffering as equally undesirable to their own. Happiness is at the core of all good things, but further reasoning is needed to set up the right moral positions, as you can see. The rational pursuit of happiness, rational self-interest, is the only good, the inherent and unescapable factor of human sentience, which is by its very nature desirable and the most important part of human existence. These are the cards we have been dealt. We must contend with pleasure and pain and pursue happiness. This is the fundamental nature of our existence, and it is all that matters. All which we ought to value acknowledges that fact. All the good things, all the things that matter, flow from the source of happiness, the source of self-interest. Self-interest not just perceived, but self-interest rational and real. This is the foundation of all that matters. My positions here require further fleshing out. They are far from perfect, and this is far from a complete guide to morality. There is a lot more to be uncovered here.